Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the broken universal translator sitting on his workbench. The device looked like a metal box the size of a laptop computer, with strange alien symbols glowing dimly across its surface. He had been working on Federation technology for 3 years now, ever since humanity made first contact with the galactic community, but this particular unit seemed different somehow. The door to his workshop slid open with a soft hiss, and Amy Rodriguez stepped inside carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was one of the best engineers on the ship, and Jake was grateful to have her help with the more complicated repairs. Amy handed him one of the cups and looked down at the translator with curiosity. "Still giving you trouble?" she asked, taking a sip of her coffee. The workshop was cramped and filled with various alien devices in different states of repair. Jake had made this small room his own personal laboratory where he could work without interruption. "Something about this one feels wrong," Jake replied, pointing at the translator with his screwdriver. Ambassador Zethkalar said it was just an old model that needed basic fixes. But look at these circuit patterns. They're way more complex than anything I've seen before. Amy leaned in closer to examine the device. The Federation ambassador had delivered the translator to Captain Lisa Bennett 3 days ago, explaining that it was a gift to help improve human communication with other species. Zethkalar was a tall reptilian being with silver scales and intelligent yellow eyes that always seemed to be watching everything carefully. Maybe they just build them differently now, Amy suggested, but her voice carried doubt. She had worked on enough Federation technology to know that their designs were usually straightforward and efficient. This translator had layers upon layers of circuitry that seemed almost intentionally hidden. Jake opened the main access panel and shined his flashlight inside. The internal components were arranged in a pattern he had never encountered before. Most Federation devices used simple linear designs that were easy to understand and repair. This translator looked like someone had built multiple systems on top of each other, creating a complex maze of connections. "Look at this," Jake said, pointing to a series of small chips embedded deep within the device. "These memory banks are completely separate from the main translation matrix. Why would a simple translator need so much extra storage space?" Amy frowned as she examined the mysterious components. "Maybe it stores more languages than the standard models. The Federation has contact with thousands of different species." "That's what I thought at first," Jake replied, carefully removing one of the memory chips. "But I ran a diagnostic on the storage capacity, and there's enough space here to hold the complete cultural and historical records of an entire civilization." The 2 humans worked in comfortable silence for the next hour, carefully mapping out the translator's internal structure. Jake had developed a reputation throughout the human fleet for his ability to understand and repair alien technology. Other technicians often brought him their most difficult problems, and he rarely failed to find a solution. "Jake, come look at this," Amy called from the other side of the workbench. She had connected her portable scanner to one of the hidden data ports. "I'm picking up active signals from inside the device even though it's supposed to be completely powered down." Jake hurried over to examine her readings. The scanner showed multiple data streams flowing between the various hidden components. It was as if the translator was constantly processing information, even when it appeared to be inactive. "That's impossible," Jake muttered, checking the power connections. "The main power cell is disconnected. There's no way those systems should be running." Amy pointed to a series of microscopic components near the device's core. "Look at these. They're not in any Federation technical manual I've ever seen. The design is completely different from their standard technology." Jake carefully examined the unusual components through his magnifying lens. The craftsmanship was incredible, far superior to anything he had encountered in 3 years of working with Federation equipment. The circuits were etched with precision that seemed almost artistic, and the materials looked more advanced than current galactic standard. "We should report this to Captain Bennett," Amy suggested, but Jake held up his hand. "Let me try something first," he said, reaching for his specialized repair tools. "If we can figure out what these hidden systems are supposed to do, we might learn something important about Federation technology." Jake had always been curious by nature, which made him excellent at his job, but sometimes got him into trouble. He carefully connected his diagnostic computer to one of the hidden data ports, hoping to access the mysterious storage systems without triggering any security protocols. The moment his computer made contact with the translator, the device suddenly came to life. Lights began flashing across its surface in patterns that neither human had seen before. Strange symbols appeared on Jake's diagnostic screen, scrolling past faster than he could read them. "Jake, disconnect it," Amy said urgently, but before he could react, the translator emitted a low humming sound and projected a holographic display into the air above the workbench. The hologram showed text in an unknown script that pulsed with an eerie blue light. The symbols were beautiful and complex, unlike the utilitarian writing systems used by most Federation species. Jake and Amy stared at the display in amazement, realizing they had accidentally activated something that was never meant to be discovered. "What did you do?" Amy whispered, afraid to speak too loudly in case it might disrupt the projection. "I have no idea," Jake replied, his eyes fixed on the pulsing alien text. "But I don't think this is standard Federation technology." The holographic display continued to cycle through different pages of text, as if the translator was trying to show them something important. Jake noticed that some of the symbols seemed familiar, though he couldn't remember where he might have seen them before. "We need to document this," Amy said, reaching for her camera. "If we're going to figure out what this means, we'll need to study it carefully." As Amy began recording the holographic display, Jake felt a strange sensation, as if the alien symbols were trying to communicate directly with his mind. The feeling was both fascinating and unsettling, suggesting that this translator was far more than just a simple communication device. The two humans worked through the night, carefully documenting everything they observed while trying to understand what they had accidentally discovered. Neither of them realized that their innocent attempt to repair a broken translator would soon reveal secrets that the Galactic Federation had spent centuries trying to keep buried. Jake and Amy spent the entire night studying the strange holographic text that continued to pulse above the translator. The symbols seemed to shift and change, as if the device was slowly unlocking different sections of hidden information. Amy had filled 3 memory cards with recordings while Jake tried to make sense of what they were seeing. "Look at this pattern," Jake said, pointing to a sequence of symbols that kept repeating. "It shows up every few minutes, always in the same place. I think it might be some kind of header or title." Amy nodded as she compared the recordings on her portable screen. "You're right. And see how these other symbols cluster around it. They could be dates or reference numbers." The translator suddenly shifted to display a new section of text, and Jake noticed something that made his heart race. Mixed in with the unknown symbols were occasional words in languages he recognized. Not Federation standard, but older human languages like Latin and Ancient Greek. "Amy, are you seeing this?" Jake whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly might cause the display to disappear. "Those are human words scattered throughout the alien text." Amy leaned closer to examine the display. "That's impossible. Humans only made contact with the galaxy 3 years ago. How could our languages be mixed with this ancient writing?" Jake began typing rapidly on his diagnostic computer, trying to isolate the human language fragments. As the translation software processed the text, individual words and phrases began to appear on his screen. Words like builders, masters, great work, and final message emerged from the alien script. "This isn't random," Jake said excitedly. "The human words are being used as translation keys. The device is trying to convert the alien language into something we can understand." Over the next several hours, more and more of the text became readable as the translator's hidden systems worked to decode the ancient records. What emerged was the story of a civilization that called themselves the Architects. According to the records, they were master builders who had constructed much of the current galactic infrastructure that the Federation now controlled. "Listen to this," Amy said, reading from the translated text on Jake's screen. "The Architects speak of building great cities among the stars and creating pathways between distant worlds. They describe technology that could harness the power of entire solar systems." Jake found another section that made him pause. This part talks about sharing their knowledge freely with younger species. The Architects seem to have been teachers, helping other civilizations advance their technology and join the galactic community. But as they continued reading, the tone of the records began to change. Later entries spoke of growing tensions with something called the Council of Worlds, which appeared to be an early version of the current Federation government. The Architects wrote about increasing demands for their technology and resources, along with restrictions on their freedom to travel and build. "Look at this date sequence," Amy said, pointing to a series of symbols that had been translated into numbers. If I'm reading this correctly, these events happened thousands of years ago. But according to Federation history, the galaxy was mostly empty back then, with only a few primitive civilizations. Jake discovered a section of records that described architect colonies across dozens of star systems. The entries detailed vast construction projects, including space stations the size of moons and transportation networks that could move ships instantly between distant galaxies. The technology described was far beyond anything the current galactic civilization possessed. This doesn't match what the Federation taught us about galactic history, Jake said quietly. They told us that advanced civilization only developed recently, and that most species achieved spaceflight within the last few thousand years. Amy found a section that made her blood run cold. The records described the systematic destruction of architect colonies by Federation forces. Battle reports detailed surprise attacks on peaceful construction sites and the deliberate targeting of civilian populations. The entries spoke of desperate evacuation attempts and final messages from dying worlds. Jake, this isn't just ancient history, Amy said, her voice trembling. According to these records, the Federation didn't just discover empty space and build their civilization. They destroyed an entire species to steal their technology. The translator continued to reveal more disturbing information as the night wore on. Jake found technical specifications for architect technology that was clearly the foundation for current Federation systems. Hyperdrive designs, energy generation methods, and even the basic principles behind universal translators were all described in the ancient records. Every piece of Federation technology we've been using is based on stolen architect designs, Jake realized. The Federation didn't invent any of this. They took it from the people they murdered. Amy discovered a section of records that contained genetic information. The data showed that the architects had encountered and studied many different species during their travels across the galaxy. Most shocking of all, the records contained detailed genetic profiles of a species that looked remarkably similar to humans. Jake, come look at this, Amy called urgently. The architects kept records of a species they called the seed children. The genetic markers match human DNA almost perfectly. Jake examined the genetic data with growing amazement. The similarities were too close to be coincidental. According to the architect records, the seed children were descendants of an ancient race that had spread life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. The architects themselves were also descended from the same original species. We're related to them, Jake said in wonder. Humans and architects evolved from the same ancestor race. That's why their technology responds to me so easily. That's why I can understand their systems, intuitively. The final sections of the records that they were able to decode that night contained star charts showing the locations of hidden architect facilities throughout the galaxy. Most of the sites were marked as destroyed, but several showed as still active, protected by advanced cloaking technology that made them invisible to Federation sensors. There's one facility relatively close to human space, Amy said, studying the star charts. If these records are accurate, it should still be operational. Jake realized the enormous implications of what they had discovered. The Federation had built their entire civilization on genocide and lies. They had destroyed the architects, stolen their technology, and rewritten history to hide their crimes. Now they were using that same stolen technology to control and manipulate newer species like humanity. We have to tell Captain Bennett about this, Amy said. She needs to know what we found. Jake nodded, but he felt a chill of fear as he thought about how the Federation might react to the discovery of these records. If they had murdered an entire civilization to keep these secrets hidden, what would they do to prevent humanity from learning the truth? As dawn approached, the translator's holographic display finally faded, leaving Jake and Amy alone with the shocking knowledge of what the Federation had really done. They had uncovered evidence of the greatest crime in galactic history, and they had no idea how dangerous that knowledge would prove to be. Captain Lisa Bennett sat in her ready room staring at the evidence that Jake and Amy had presented to her. The recordings of the holographic text filled her computer screen, along with the translations that revealed the terrible truth about the Federation's past. She had read through the material 3 times hoping to find some other explanation, but the evidence was undeniable. You're absolutely certain about these translations? Captain Bennett asked Jake, who stood at attention beside Amy in front of her desk. The captain was a stern woman in her 40s who had earned her position through years of dedicated service to the human fleet. Yes, ma'am, Jake replied. The translator's own systems provided the language conversion protocols. We didn't interpret anything ourselves. The device decoded the records automatically once we activated the hidden subroutines. Captain Bennett stood and walked to the viewport that looked out into space. The research vessel Endeavour was currently stationed at the edge of human territory, far from the main Federation shipping lanes. She had always been proud of humanity's membership in the galactic community, but now everything she thought she knew felt like a lie. "Have you told anyone else about this discovery?" she asked without turning around. "No, ma'am," Amy answered. "We came straight to you as soon as we finished documenting the initial findings." The translator is still in Jake's workshop, secured behind triple encryption locks. Captain Bennett turned back to face them. "Good. We need to keep this information contained until we understand what we're dealing with. If the Federation really did commit genocide to steal architect technology, then our entire relationship with them is built on deception." Jake felt compelled to demonstrate something he had discovered during his continued work with the translator. "Captain, there's something else you need to see. With your permission, I'd like to show you how this knowledge affects other Federation technology on our ship." Captain Bennett nodded, and Jake pulled out a small Federation communication device that every crew member carried. He activated the translator and held it near the communicator. Immediately, the device's display changed, showing new menu options that had never been visible before. "The Federation gave us simplified versions of their technology," Jake explained, "but the architect protocols unlock the full capabilities of these systems. This communicator can actually function across galactic distances instantaneously, not just within local space like we were told." Amy added her own demonstration by connecting her engineering scanner to the translator. "All of our Federation equipment has hidden functions that were locked away from us. The medical scanners can detect and cure diseases we didn't even know existed. The power systems can generate 10 times more energy than we thought possible." Captain Bennett realized the implications immediately. "They've been controlling us by limiting our access to our own technology. They gave us tools but made sure we could never use them to their full potential." A soft chime from the captain's communication system interrupted their discussion. The voice of Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark, the ship's communications officer, came through the speakers with obvious concern in his tone. Captain Bennett to the bridge immediately. "We have an urgent message from Ambassador Zeth Kalar requesting an immediate meeting regarding Federation property, allegedly stolen from his quarters." Captain Bennett looked at Jake and Amy with alarm. How could he possibly know what we discovered? Jake's face went pale as he realized what must have happened. "Captain, if all Federation technology is hidden monitoring systems, then they've been watching everything we do. Every conversation, every discovery, every private moment has been recorded and transmitted back to them." The three humans hurried to the bridge where Lieutenant Commander Clark was waiting with a worried expression. He handed Captain Bennett a datapad containing the ambassador's message, which was written in formal diplomatic language but carried an unmistakable threat. "The ambassador claims that critical Federation technology has been tampered with aboard our vessel," Clark reported. "He's demanding immediate access to inspect all Federation equipment in our possession, particularly any translation devices." Captain Bennett read through the message carefully. Between the diplomatic language, she could see that Zeth Kalar knew exactly what they had discovered. The ambassador was giving them one chance to surrender the evidence quietly before taking more direct action. "Captain, we're detecting multiple Federation ships approaching our position," called out Ensign Carol Wright from the sensor station. 3 heavy cruisers and 2 destroyer escorts, all moving at maximum speed." Amy grabbed Jake's arm. "They're not here for a diplomatic inspection. Those are warships." Captain Bennett made a decision that would change everything for the crew of the Endeavour. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for immediate departure from current position. Engineering, bring the hyperdrive online and plot a course for the coordinates that Jake Morrison will provide." "Captain?" asked Clark in confusion. "The Federation has been lying to us from the beginning," Captain Bennett announced to her bridge crew. "They built their civilization on genocide and theft, and they've been controlling humanity through deception and surveillance. We have evidence that could expose their crimes, but only if we can get it to safety." Jake quickly transmitted the coordinates for the hidden architect facility to the navigation system. "Captain, if we can reach that location, we might find more evidence and possibly allies who can help us reveal the truth." The Endeavor's engines came online just as the Federation ships entered weapons range. Captain Bennett could see Ambassador Zeth Kalar's ship leading the formation, no longer bothering to maintain his diplomatic pretense. Federation vessels. This is Captain Bennett of the human research vessel Endeavor. She broadcast on all frequencies. We are exercising our right as a sovereign species to travel freely through unclaimed space. Any attempt to interfere with our passage will be considered an act of aggression. Zeth Kalar's reply came immediately, his voice cold and threatening. Captain Bennett, you are harboring stolen Federation property and classified information. Surrender immediately or face the consequences of your actions. All Federation technology was given to us freely as part of our membership agreement. Captain Bennett responded. We have violated no laws and stolen nothing. However, we have discovered evidence of crimes that the galaxy deserves to know about. The lead Federation cruiser powered up its weapons, making the ambassador's intentions clear. Captain Bennett turned to her crew with determination in her voice. They're not going to let us leave with this evidence, she said. But if we can reach that architect facility, we might find the proof we need to expose the truth about the Federation to every species in the galaxy. Jump drive ready? Captain, called the engineering officer. Then let's go find some answers, Captain Bennett ordered. Take us to the coordinates Jake provided, maximum speed. The Endeavor disappeared in a flash of light, just as the Federation ships opened fire on their previous position. The Endeavor emerged from hyperspace in what appeared to be a completely empty star system. Jake checked the coordinates 3 times to make sure they had arrived at the correct location. But the ship's sensors detected nothing except a dying red star and several barren planets orbiting in the distance. Are you sure this is the right place? Captain Bennett asked as she studied the empty space around them. The bridge crew was running continuous scans, but finding no trace of any structures or technology. Jake activated the translator and connected it to the ship's sensor array. Immediately, the display screens began showing readings that had been invisible moments before. A massive structure appeared on the sensors, easily the size of a small moon, cloaked and hidden in orbit around the innermost planet. There it is, Jake said with excitement. The architect facility is using some kind of advanced stealth technology that makes it completely invisible to normal sensors. We can only detect it using their own detection protocols. Amy worked at her engineering station to analyze the readings. The energy output from that structure is incredible. After thousands of years, their systems are still running at full capacity. Whatever power source they're using makes our best fusion reactors look like primitive batteries. Captain Bennett stared at the massive facility in amazement. The structure was covered in the same elegant geometric patterns that had appeared in the translator's holographic displays. Even from a distance, she could see that architect construction methods were far more advanced than anything the current galactic civilization could achieve. Take us closer, she ordered. But maintain a safe distance until we know what we're dealing with. As the Endeavor approached the facility, Jake noticed that the translator was responding to signals being transmitted from the structure. The device began displaying new text, but this time, the symbols were immediately converted to readable language without any delay. Captain, the facility is trying to communicate with us, Jake reported. The message says, "Welcome, children of the Builders. You have traveled far to reach this place of memory. Come aboard and learn the truth that was hidden from the galaxy." Sergeant Nick Davis, the ship's senior Marine, stepped forward with concern on his face. Captain, this could be a trap. We don't know if that structure is really controlled by architects or if the Federation has discovered it and turned it into a weapon. Captain Bennett considered the warning carefully, but she knew they needed concrete evidence if they hoped to expose the Federation's crimes to the galaxy. Prepare a small away team. Jake, Amy, Sergeant Davis, and myself. We'll take one of the shuttles and investigate the facility personally. The shuttle bay doors opened to reveal the massive architect structure growing larger as they approached. Jake guided their small craft toward what appeared to be a docking port, following navigation signals from the translator. The docking process was surprisingly smooth, with the ancient systems recognizing their shuttle and guiding it safely inside. The 4 humans emerged from their shuttle into an airlock that adjusted its atmosphere to match their breathing requirements. Beyond the airlock, they found themselves in a corridor that stretched into the distance, lit by a soft blue glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air is perfect, Amy reported after checking her scanner. Temperature, pressure, and oxygen levels are exactly what humans need. The facility's systems are automatically adapting to our presence. They walked through corridors that were clearly designed for beings much taller than humans, but comfortable pathways had been created at their level, as if the facility had modified itself to accommodate them. The walls were covered with the same beautiful geometric patterns they had seen on the Translator, but here the design seemed to move and shift as they passed. "This place feels alive," Sergeant Davis observed, keeping his weapon ready despite the peaceful atmosphere, "like it's watching us and thinking about what we need." Jake led them deeper into the facility, following directions from the Translator. They passed through chambers filled with equipment that was clearly far beyond current galactic technology. Massive machines hummed quietly as they performed functions that the humans could only guess at. "Look at this," Amy called from beside one of the machines. Her scanner was detecting energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. "This single device is generating enough power to supply an entire planet, and there are hundreds of them in this chamber alone." They finally reached what appeared to be the facility's central archive, a vast chamber with walls covered floor to ceiling with data storage crystals. In the center of the room stood a pedestal containing what looked like an advanced version of the Translator they had been working with. Jake approached the central console and activated it using the protocols he had learned. Immediately, holographic displays filled the air around them, showing images and text that told the complete story of the architect civilization and their destruction by the Federation. "These are the complete historical records," Jake said in amazement. "Everything the Federation tried to destroy is preserved here. Battle reports, witness testimonies, genetic records, technological specifications, everything we need to prove what really happened." The displays showed images of architect cities that spanned entire continents, space stations that dwarfed current Federation facilities, and transportation networks that could move ships instantly between distant galaxies. The technology was so advanced that it made the current galactic civilization look primitive by comparison. Amy discovered records that detailed the final phases of the genocide. The Federation used a biological weapon specifically engineered to target architect physiology. They poisoned entire worlds, killing billions of innocent beings who had never threatened anyone. Captain Bennett found diplomatic records that showed the architects had repeatedly tried to negotiate peace with the Federation Council. Even as their colonies were being destroyed, they offered to share their technology freely and withdraw from disputed territories. The Federation response was always the same: complete extermination. The architects weren't just victims, Jake realized as he studied the genetic records. They were our cousins. Both species evolved from the same ancient root race that seeded life throughout the galaxy millions of years ago. That's why their technology responds to human operators. Sergeant Davis made a disturbing discovery while examining the facility's defensive systems. "Captain, the external sensors are detecting a large Federation fleet approaching this system. Admiral Korath himself is leading the formation." Captain Bennett felt her heart sink as she realized the implications. Admiral Korath was known throughout the galaxy as the Federation's most ruthless military commander. If he had been sent to deal with them personally, it meant the Federation was taking no chances. "They tracked us here somehow," she said grimly. "We need to gather as much evidence as possible before they arrive." Jake found the facility's communication systems and discovered something that made him gasp with excitement. "Captain, this archive contains a quantum transmitter capable of broadcasting to every inhabited system in the galaxy simultaneously. We could send all this evidence directly to billions of beings at once. How long would it take to upload all the records?" Captain Bennett asked urgently. "At least 30 minutes to transfer everything," Amy replied after checking the data storage requirements. Captain Bennett looked at the approaching Federation fleet on the tactical display. They had perhaps 20 minutes before Admiral Korath arrived with enough firepower to destroy the entire facility. "Then we better get started," she said with determination. "The galaxy deserves to know the truth." Admiral Korath's massive fleet emerged from hyperspace, just as Jake began uploading the architect records to the quantum transmitter. Through the facility's sensors, Captain Bennett could see dozens of Federation warships taking positions around the ancient structure, their weapons powered and ready to fire. "Human vessel and facility occupants, this is Admiral Korath of the Federation Defense Force," came the transmission across all frequencies. "You are in possession of classified materials that pose a threat to galactic security. Surrender immediately and submit to memory modification, or face the consequences. Captain Bennett activated the facility's communication system to respond. Admiral Korath, we have uncovered evidence of crimes against sapient life that the galaxy has a right to know about. The Federation built its power on genocide and lies. You speak of events you do not understand. Korath replied, his voice cold and threatening. The Federation maintains order and peace throughout the galaxy. We will not allow ancient conflicts to destabilize the civilization we have built. Jake worked frantically at the quantum transmitter, while Amy helped him organize the massive amount of data they needed to broadcast. The upload progress showed only 15% complete, but Federation ships were already moving into attack formation around the facility. The defensive systems in this facility are still operational, Sergeant Davis reported from a weapons control station. The architects built this place to survive anything. If we can activate the shields, we might have enough time to complete the transmission. Jake paused his work on the transmitter to help Davis understand the architect defense protocols. The ancient systems responded to his commands, and suddenly the entire facility was surrounded by an energy barrier that sparkled with power beyond anything the humans had ever seen. Admiral Korath's ships immediately opened fire on the facility, but their weapons had no effect on the architect shields. Energy beams and projectiles simply disappeared when they touched the barrier, absorbed by technology that was thousands of years more advanced than anything the Federation possessed. Impossible, came Korath's voice over the communication channel. Those defenses were destroyed millennia ago. How are they still functional? Captain Bennett realized that the Admiral's reaction revealed something important. You knew this place existed. The Federation has been hunting for surviving architect facilities for thousands of years. Haven't they? The architects were a threat to galactic stability, Korath admitted, abandoning any pretense of diplomacy. Their technology made other species obsolete. Their idealistic beliefs about sharing knowledge freely would have destroyed the natural order of civilization. Amy looked up from her work with the data upload. Natural order. You mean the order where the Federation controls everyone else by limiting their access to advanced technology? Jake discovered something in the facility's records that made him understand the Federation's true fear. Captain, the architects weren't just advanced. They were teachers. Every species they encountered was elevated to their level of technology within a single generation. The Federation couldn't maintain control in a galaxy where everyone had access to architect knowledge. The upload progress reached 50%, but Admiral Korath was growing desperate. His ships began firing more powerful weapons at the facility, including planet-destroying devices that should have been banned by galactic law. Nothing penetrated the architect shields, but the Admiral's willingness to use such extreme weapons showed how far the Federation would go to keep their secrets hidden. Deploy the quantum disruptors, Korath ordered his fleet. If we cannot destroy the facility directly, we will destabilize local space-time until nothing can survive here. Captain Bennett realized that the Admiral was willing to destroy an entire star system to prevent the truth from spreading. Jake, how much longer do we need? 10 more minutes, Jake replied, sweat dripping from his forehead as he worked. The transmitter is encoding the data for broadcast to every inhabited system simultaneously. Once it starts, nothing will be able to stop the signal. The Federation fleet activated weapons that warped space itself around the facility. Reality began to bend and twist as quantum disruptors tried to tear apart the fundamental structure of matter and energy. The architect shields held firm, but warning alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The shields are holding, but the space around us is becoming unstable, Amy reported. If they keep using those weapons, they might create a black hole that destroys everything in this system. Sergeant Davis found something unexpected while monitoring the facility's external communications. Captain, we're receiving signals from other locations. It looks like our presence here has activated hidden architect facilities throughout the galaxy. Jake looked up from the transmitter with excitement. The facilities are networked together. When we activated this one, it sent wake-up signals to all the others. There are dozens of them coming online across Federation space. Admiral Korath's voice became frantic as reports flooded in from across his empire. All Federation forces, priority alert. Ancient installations are activating in sectors 7, 12, and 15. Establish quarantine perimeters immediately. Captain Bennett realized that their actions had triggered something far bigger than they had imagined. The architects had planned for the possibility that their civilization might be destroyed, and they had created a network of hidden facilities that would preserve their knowledge and technology for future generations. Upload complete, Jake announced as the quantum transmitter finally finished processing all the data. Beginning galactic broadcast in 3, 2, 1. The transmission began, sending the complete historical records of the architect genocide to every inhabited planet in the galaxy simultaneously. No Federation censorship system could block a signal that was being broadcast from dozens of hidden facilities at once, using technology that was far beyond their ability to jam or intercept. Within minutes, the communication channels were flooded with responses from across the galaxy. Species after species began reporting that they had received the transmission and were studying the evidence it contained. Many civilizations immediately began searching for hidden architect technology in their own systems. Federation Command, this is Admiral Koreth, came the desperate transmission. The containment has failed. All species are now aware of the historical records, requesting immediate instructions, but there was no response from Federation Command. Reports were coming in from the capital world that massive riots had broken out as citizens learned the truth about their government. Similar uprisings were spreading across Federation territory as the evidence of genocide became impossible to deny. Jake discovered that the facility's systems could monitor communications across the galaxy. Captain, Federation forces are surrendering on dozens of worlds. The member species are breaking away from central control and forming new alliances based on shared access to architect technology. Admiral Koreth made one final desperate attempt to destroy the evidence. He ordered his entire fleet to ram the facility at full speed, hoping that the physical impact might succeed where weapons had failed. But the architect shields absorbed the kinetic energy just as easily as they had deflected the energy. Weapons, this is Captain Bennett of the human vessel Endeavor. To all Federation forces, she broadcast across the system. The truth is now spreading throughout the galaxy. You can choose to be part of the solution or continue supporting a government built on lies and murder. One by one, the Federation ships in Admiral Koreth's fleet began standing down. Their crews had also received the galactic broadcast and were no longer willing to fight to protect the secrets of a regime that had committed genocide. Only Koreth's flagship continued to attack the facility, its weapons firing uselessly against the ancient defenses. Jake made a final discovery in the facility's archives that brought tears to his eyes. Captain, the last message from the architect homeworld. They knew they were going to die, but they were proud that their knowledge would survive to help future generations build a better galaxy. 3 months later, Jake stood in his workshop aboard the Endeavor, but this time he was not alone. Representatives from dozens of species worked alongside him, learning to understand and operate architect technology. The Federation had collapsed completely, replaced by a loose alliance of free worlds that shared knowledge and resources instead of hoarding them. Amy entered the workshop carrying reports from across the galaxy. The new councils have voted unanimously to establish the Architect Memorial Archives on 50 different worlds. Every species will have access to the complete historical records and technical databases. Captain Bennett, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the new Galactic Alliance, joined them to review the progress reports. The architects would be proud of what we've built from their sacrifice. A galaxy where knowledge is shared freely and no species dominates another. Jake looked out the viewport at the construction of a new research station, where humans and aliens work together as equals, using architect technology to build something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The secret that the Federation had wanted buried had become the foundation for a new age of cooperation and discovery among the stars.